and zone of proximal development. Now, what was the zone of proximal development as we discussed? The zone of proximal development is the space between what the learner already knows and where he can actually be, but he can't be there unless and until he or she is supported or is provided with some sort of assistance. So with a little assistance, the learner can climb the stair, that step over there, but he or she cannot do it himself or herself. And because within the zone of proximal development, scaffolding is so important, this supportive assistance is so important. That is why often the zone of proximal development and the discussion of scaffolding takes place hand in hand. Now, these social practices of assistance that influence learning, that if we say that scaffolding happens within interaction, that also means that within this zone of proximal development, as the learners move towards their journey, towards the goal of learning something they don't know as yet, but which matches with their developmental stage, that would mean that the learners are actually active agents and participants in their own learning. And it is through the first language which the learners are constantly drawing upon. It is the first language which is acting as the mediating tool, a supportive assistance in itself, that is allowing them to engage with others as well as engage with a second language structure or task that they did not know before or they did not control before. So through this scaffolding, through this interaction or scaffolding, they are now able to move to expand their knowledge of the second language. Now, when we are talking about ZPD and when we are talking about scaffolding, this, if you would say, is completely different from Krashen's theory of comprehensible input. Now, Krashen argued that if the learners are given some input which they can comprehend, this would allow them to learn the second language. So this means if they are in a situation where second language is used and which they can comprehend, they will be able to learn the second language as if they would just absorb it like a sponge. Now, although the concept of ZPD is also emphasizing the concept of comprehensible input to a certain extent, that it is talking about teaching learners or exposing the learners to a second language structure which is right for their development level. However, it is different in nature from that, because over here we are talking about learners actively engaging in their own learning and not just passively absorbing the second language. So this is a very important difference that we need to keep in mind, because this is precisely where within the zone of proximal development, the value of the first language of the learner emerges. So we cannot possibly underestimate its importance for the learning that happens within interactions in the zone of proximal development, because it is the first language that scaffolds or supports the learning process, simplifies the L2 tasks, keeps the frustration of the learners in check, whenever they will find or anyone finds something very more difficult or extremely difficult to handle, they become frustrated and they stop or move away from the task. So the use of L1 helps to keep that type of frustration in check, and it maintains the focus and interest of the learners. So the role of L1 within ZPD can hardly be underestimated.